Welcome back to our study on the book of Romans. This is Sonship Establishment, and this session is going to cover the notes for 5 and 6. Let me start off by telling you that I see the policy of evil in two parts. First, there is a general policy of evil that is at work in the world. It's the same for everybody, and whether it victimizes you or not, it just doesn't change. It's what it is. It's against the mystery, and it wants to keep the mystery a secret. It wants to keep right division from being known. It's those kinds of issues. That policy is already at work. But there is an individualized attack that is coming by the policy of evil when we're about halfway through the education as a simple son. It'll show up over in Romans chapter 13. Now, listen, I know that you may not think this, but we're not in that second part yet, no matter what. I promise. When it happens, you'll look back and you'll go, no, there wasn't anything happening back there that was like this. But there is an issue in the policy of evil, though, that I think that we're kind of overlooking. And since this, okay, I had Tommy erase that, because verses 28 to 39 is producing that unwavering confidence that without it, you will fall victim to a particular aspect of the policy of evil. I want to bring that core issue back to the fore, and I want to talk about that for a moment, because the thing that is kind of generally working right now in a very non-specific way is going to get very specific later on. You have to be able to know about this, and that is the allurement of something put forth that seems to be more desirable and more attractive than what your Heavenly Father is telling you about. Now, you may not understand how that could be, but let me just give you some example. Let me give you an example if we can. We were all in time past taught things that were not accurate for the dispensation of grace. We were told to conduct ourselves in certain ways or to do certain things, and that just wasn't what God was doing today at all. But in this, let me take one of those. In this dispensation of grace, God is not intervening in the physical, material things, but rather His work is in the inner man of the believer. He doesn't want to ward off any of that other stuff. He wants to equip us inside to be able to go through that. And we came to understand why God was doing that. We traced this all through Paul's epistles, and we did not find one single exception to that consistent truth. We even examined all of Paul's prayers. Remember, all of those kinds of issues. We did all of that. But we don't always view what our Father is doing as the more excellent way that He views it. And that's not going to be able to last for much longer, because we have to be able to see this for the way that He sees it. And although our apostle explained to us that this dispensation of grace is very different from the dispensation of the law, even though he explained that here is what God is doing, here's not what God is doing, and here's why. And even though there is nothing in his epistles that, by the way, the epistles that are written specifically to us and about us as members of the church, the body of Christ, even though there's nothing in those epistles that would instruct us to believe or to pray or to expect that God is somehow going to miraculously shuffle around circumstances in order to bail us out of a jam of some kind, there is a thought that has been planted in the minds of believers. And here's the thought, that somehow what God is doing is inferior to what we want to have happen. And as long as that thought is there, we're going to have a problem. And what Satan would never be able to accomplish with some of us by attacking us or threatening us or intimidating us, he will be able to accomplish with this counterfeit truth that he's going to offer up in the place of the one that our Heavenly Father is offering us. And I'm going to tell you what that is. That's the strange woman at work. We talked about the evil man and the strange woman, and she is subtle. And when she goes about things, you realize that when it's happening, you don't even know that it's happening. And I'm going to show you this. We're going to go back to where we saw about this in Proverbs 7, and that'll be the first passage that we look at here. Proverbs chapter 7. Well, it is spooky, the policy of evil, isn't it? Okay. Proverbs chapter 7 and verse 6. I didn't realize we had effects going. This is great. This is Very intuitive. Okay. For at the window of my house I looked through my casement, and I beheld among the simple ones. And that ought to tell you something, right? This is somebody that's in the education of the skills to be a simple son. I discerned among the youths a man void of understanding. And that's really the problem. Because as a simple son, I'm going to tell you what, you think you know more than you actually do. You do know something, but it's almost like the guy said, just enough to hurt yourself now. Void of understanding, passing through the street near her corner. By the way, if we had read up the firstest chapter, we would have seen this was the strange one. Okay. And he went the way to her house. With her much fair speech, she caused him to yield. With the flattering of her lips, she forced him. He goeth after her straightway, as an ox goeth to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till a dart strike through his liver, as a bird hasteth to the snare, and knoweth not it is for his life. What I'm after here is the verification of the point that I just made. The policy of evil is so smooth, you won't know it's happening until it's too late. You have to be aware. You have to be made aware of it, and you have to pay attention, and you have to look. I want you to notice how she forces him. I know everybody reads this passage in Proverbs, and they make the strange woman a harlot, but you notice she's not alluring him with anything physically. It's fair speech. Do you notice that? You know what that is? A more enticing truth. A more alluring. It is. It's very subtle. Which is, by the way, why the next thing a simple son needs is what? Subtlety. That's exactly right. And so, with her much fair speech, she caused him to yield. That means you're going to be hearing something that's going to make you rethink, see? With the flattering of her lips, she forced him. This is all about something he's hearing, right? And when it says, he goeth after her straightway as an ox goeth to the slaughter, what does that mean? Well, he's following her, right? But what's as an ox to the slaughter, huh? Yeah, he has no idea what's in store for him. The ox is just taking another trip. He doesn't realize it's on the Green Mile. So, why did nobody enjoy that but me? I'm the only one. I've used that twice. I'm the only one that enjoys that. Do you not like Tom Hanks? What's up? Whatever, okay. The ox goeth to the slaughter. He doesn't know where he's going. And then look here, and he knoweth not that it's for his life. He doesn't even appreciate what's in the balance. That's the subtlety of what this is like. And this alternative truth, this counterfeit that you're going to encounter from the policy of evil is going to be just that smooth. That it's just, unless you pay attention to what your father's telling you, it's going to be undetectable. And the point I'm making is the strange woman is going to take you somewhere you can't imagine. I'm not overselling it or overstating it. And it's going to accomplish the very opposite of what you expected when you went into that. And I'm going to give you some examples of this because I can't afford for us to lose out over this issue. And by the way, the whole time it's happening, you'll be unaware of it. That's the deceptive power that's going to be at work here. It's going to sound so good and even feel so right that you'll convince yourself, listen, that God is behind it. This has got to be God. So I was up at the post office the other day, and someone was, well, I say the other day, it's been some time back now, and our friends from Nebraska are moving down. They were looking for property, and she said, oh, I'm selling my house. And I said, well, I know some folks that are coming down looking for property. And she said, well, here's my number. Have them call me. She said, this is going to work out great. She said, this is a God thing. And I thought, no, it's not. It's not. It's not. Yeah, she had a piece about it. Right. She said, this is a God. I said, no. And I'm not trying to make fun of her, but I'm just saying, that's what everybody says. We all said that. And I thought, no, it's not a God thing. By the way, they did not buy her house, so I don't know whose thing that was. But, well, okay. So, okay, moving along. This will be so smooth that it'll look like, and it'll sound so right. And everything will fall into place just so that you'll think God is behind it. And you'll be so convinced of it that you'll cling to it, listen, even when it doesn't work. And people do that. Okay, now my illustration. I wish I had, well, I don't. I wish I had done this. I meant to do this Sunday in Monaghan's. I didn't do it, and I wish I'd have done it here. But suppose I took a bottle and I just filled it with water and put some food coloring in it, and I made a label and stuck it on there, and I want to call the label Eureka. You know what the word Eureka means. I found it. And I'm going to make some fantastic claims about this product. I'm going to try to sell it. In fact, I actually thought about taking it to Monaghan's and putting several bottles together and making a little display and explaining to people that if you'll drink 2 ounces of Eureka, that anything you've lost or misplaced can be found. And I was going to put a price tag of $50 a bottle on the bottles. That hurts my feelings that y'all are laughing at my Eureka. Wayne, can you control your kids? Okay. So, yeah, right. Fruit doesn't fall too far from the tree, does it? Okay. So I've got this bottle, and I'm going to make the claim. And by the way, I'm not just making a fantastic claim. And there is a thing you have to do. You do have to sit. You have to face true north, not magnetic north. You have to face true north. And you do have to concentrate for a few minutes on the object that you're wanting to find. But I'll guarantee you that if you'll drink 2 ounces of this and follow the directions on the bottle to the letter, that whatever it is you've misplaced or whatever it is you lost, or no matter where it is in the world, you'll find it. Now, let me ask you, if you're getting out of your, huh?
It probably worked because you've taken your mind off it.
Well, see, I'm counting on it. I'm also counting on the fact that most of the things that you've lost around your home, you eventually what? Find. Okay. Now here's my point. Suppose you're getting out of your car at Walmart, you're walking in, and a guy comes up to you and he says, I've got this bottle called Eureka, and I know you've never heard of it, but let me tell you, anything you've ever lost, you can find it. I have to drink 2 ounces of this, sit in a chair, face north, and just concentrate. You'll find whatever you've lost, and it's just $50 a bottle. Teresa, are you buying a bottle? Oh, gosh. No help whatsoever. Linda, thank you. Okay. No, okay. The answer is no. You're not going to buy from some guy's trying to sell you this in the parking lot at Walmart. You're not going to buy that, Teresa. Just get that on film for everybody. Now tell them where you work, but then that would really seal the deal. Okay. This bottle, you know what? Now look. You know it's a fantastic claim, right? But you know all I need to start selling this is for somebody. Now, by the way, they're not going to pay $50 for it. That is pretty outlandish. So what if I give them the bottle? If I gave you the bottle, Linda, would you take it and face north? And no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. But you know what? But Teresa would. And you know what? All I need is for Teresa to take it and face north and concentrate and then get up and find what it was she was looking for. And guess what we have now? We have proof. It works. And I just need it to work. And then someone can say, this guy tried to sell me a bottle of Eureka in the parking lot, and then Teresa will go, I did that, it worked. I drank it, and it worked. And you know what then they'll think? Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I guess I could try it. And yeah. You have any left in your bottle? Okay. That's all I need to get that going. And now the point I'm trying to make is, Linda, why wouldn't you buy my bottle?
Why are you selling a whole bottle when there's all I need is 2 ounces?
Well, you use it more than once. You look like a person that loses stuff. No offense, but
I don't buy stuff from people on the street.
okay. What's really the reason you don't want to?
I don't believe you.
Yes, I don't think it works, right? That's really the reason. But you know what? Even if you don't believe it works, I'm going to tell you this. There is a circumstance that may arise one day that you would be willing to try even something that you don't believe will work because you'll be desperate enough. Because when you've exhausted everything else, you know what you'll think? You'll think, you know what? Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't work. You know what? I'll try anything. That's the mentality that the policy of evil needs. Because when you're suffering under the policy of evil, all you're really looking for is some relief. Now, I'm going to tell you that even if you know what, someone that's really hooked on Eureka and they really believe and they're singing his praises, if I run into them and I go, hey, I invented that product, it's just water and food coloring, there's nothing to it. You know what they'll say to me? It doesn't, I don't care. You'll never convince me it doesn't work. Because all they need is for that experience to work out, and now they're hooked. And the truth doesn't matter anymore. And what I'm telling you is that you'll get to a place where I believe in right division, you'll throw that out. I know about Israel's program, but you'll go over and you'll grab something out of that program and you'll bring it into the dispensation of grace. You know God's not manipulating physical, material things in the dispensation of grace, but you know what you'll do? You'll beg him and cry and ask him to anyway. Do you know why? Because what you're asking for is more attractive than what your Father's telling you about going through it. Yes, it is. And that's where the policy of evil is going to get to have its way. And by the way, if it works, here's what they'll say. Remember when we did the Wangadal thing? You remember the first letter at the end, and the gal, when she writes, oh, I'm so grateful for the Wangadal, blah, 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 and then at the end she puts, God bless you. And I thought, really? Wow. People will start they'll say, you know what, thank God you came along with this. And they'll start now ascribing glory to God for something he is not involved in at all. All they had to do was interpret the circumstances the way I need them to. Do you realize how many times we've done that in our lives? Over and over. So here's what I'm going to tell you. You got a question, Sue? Well, it's in that area. I don't think everybody that's doing it is thinking about witchcraft necessarily. I think that, well, I not always. Not always. In the old days, we'd have bundled all that up into one bundle, and we'd have called it all witchcraft, and we'd have burned them at the stake. Now, I'm going to tell you that, you know what? There's people that are involved in that. It's just stuff. Look, I don't want to. Yeah, right. I don't want to get off on that, but I understand about where Halloween comes from and what that's all about. I understand about the tree at Christmas time and the decorations, and I know people that preach against Christmas. And if you do that, that's fine. That's your business. You're a son. You can make your own decision about that. But I have to tell you, I went trick-or-treating. I dressed up every year. I went trick-or-treating. I got candied apples, and I never worshiped the devil. I did. Not just me. Now, that's just my parents let me do it. I did it and got away with it. And guess what? I love Jesus. I got saved when I was 8 years old. And I've been in the ministry from the time I got out of Bible college. And here I am now. I don't attribute that to trick-or-treating, but I'm just saying it didn't keep me from it. It didn't turn me into a... Okay. I'm trying to get to the point. I want to give you one more passage from the Proverbs, and that's chapter. Is it 5? Yeah. For the lips of a strange woman drop as a honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold on hell. Lest thou shouldst ponder the path of life, her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them. Hear me now, therefore, O ye children, depart not from the words of my mouth. Remove thy way far from her, and come not nigh the door of her house, lest thou give thine honor unto others, and thy years unto the cruel, lest strangers be filled with thy wealth, and thy labors be in the house of a stranger. Here's the part I'm after. And thou mourn at the last, when thy flesh and thy body are consumed. What's he talking about? Your flesh and your body are consumed. You're dead. Not until you're dead do you say, How have I hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof, and have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined mine ear to them that instructed me? I was almost in all evil in the midst of the congregation in the assembly. Can it be possible to be right in the middle of an assembly and get caught by the policy of evil and spend your whole life fooled by the policy of evil's counterfeit truth, only to discover at the end that thing went the direct opposite way? It wasn't God at all. Yes, that's possible. Not only possible, folks, it's happening everywhere. All right, so the end of the matter is persisting in doctrine that is contrary to your sonship. And that means doctrine that is not taught by your apostle. I don't care how attractive it sounds or how believable it is. If your apostle doesn't teach it to you, then you know automatically where that's from and you know what to do with it. Stay away from it. Those little pet doctrines are not as benign as you think they are. Someone says, oh, well, does it really matter? It will destroy your sonship life. And I think that matters. Okay, now back to Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Now, I do want to answer a lot of questions about this, but I've decided, and I think this is the wise thing to do, let me tell you what this verse is about. I'm going to give it to you in a nutshell, and then we'll come back and I'll prove that to you, okay? And that way, we'll just be looking at it. I think this is the best way to do it. Verse 28 is your heavenly Father's assurance that no matter what happens to you, at no point will you be in a situation that is not profitable by sharpening, honing, and developing your sonship skills that you're going to need when you get into the heavenly places. Let me say it to you another way. Whatever you go through, whether it is good, bad, or indifferent, it is all going to be beneficial to you because it is going to equip you by giving you some much needed experience to face some things you will encounter in the heavenly places. I guess I should say this another way. This education is not just about preparing you to live here and now. It is preparing you to be able to effectively labor with your Father out in the creature. And the things you are going through, whether they are good, great, indifferent, bad, or terrible, all of them are preparing you for that labor. So all I'm really doing now is putting this in a nutshell. That's what verse 28 is saying. When it says, all things work together for good. That, by the way, do you know how we usually interpret that? Let me read it the way we really think about it. And we know that bad things work together for good. Because we never think about this verse when it comes to good things, do we? See, we only quote it when something bad happens. Well, I had a flat. Well, all things work together for good. But no one ever says, I got a raise. No one ever goes, well, all things work together for good. But it didn't say bad things. It said what? All things. So the way you're thinking about the verse can really only make sense if you get rid of the all and replace it with bad. So you've been thinking about this verse all wrong. This verse is not talking about, and I know we talked about a bunch of things that it wasn't, but this is not about when some extremely bad things happen to you, God is somehow ultimately going to work out some kind of good for you out of it. Listen, he's not talking about what's happening to you here on this earth in that verse. He's talking about something that you're being prepared to do in the creature. That's where the good is. See, we also think the good means it's all going to work together for good. It means for me right here and now, I'm going to get some good things. That it's going to work out for good. It looked bad, but God's going to swing it around and all of a sudden make it good. You know what they're going to be? They're going to be bad things. But the experience that you're gaining by going through those bad things with your sonship education to deal with them is going to give you practical experience you're going to need when you get in the creature. And listen carefully, your Father is not ordaining bad things for you. He is not even for the purpose of training you bringing about a bad thing. He's not even bringing about a good thing. He is allowing everything that happens, good or bad, to be a training ground. That's what you know what this is? Verse 28 is God saying, everything that happens to you folks is you right now being on the practice field. Because one day you're going to be up in the heavenly places where the real game takes place, and you're going to need the experience that you gained in practice. Are you with me? That's what verse 28 is talking about. That's how all things work together for good. Not just bad things, all things. It really does mean all things. And by the way, let me give me this next verse, Trent, verse 35. There are some bad things. Here they are. Here's the step-by-step progression of the policy of evil when it comes to attack. As we progress through the curriculum, we encounter more and more of these. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation? By the way, I quoted these in the last session. I said, really, you're going to benefit from tribulation. You're going to benefit from persecution. You're going to benefit from perils. You're going to benefit from nakedness. You're going to benefit from famine. Remember me saying that? You are going to benefit. How do I benefit? Oh, someone says, oh, I get more, you know what? I'll get rich. It's not talking about that kind of a benefit. It's talking about, because we're in the context of sonship, oh, this will be a shock. It's a benefit to your sonship life. Do you see? It's a benefit of being a son. You're actually going to be a son now that can, and I know this raises a question, so let me say it now, and then we'll talk about it in a future session. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a minute. Now wait, I understand what you're saying, but if what you're saying is true, you're saying that even the bad things that our Father is allowing to happen, He is allowing to happen for the purpose of us putting our sonship skills to work to deal with those bad things. And as we gain experience doing that, we're going to utilize that experience in the heavenly places. Exactly right. And now you're thinking, wait a minute, what's happening in the heavenly places that bad stuff is going to give us experience for? Because you were thinking, when we get up there, it's just all butterflies and flowers. That's what you thought, isn't it? And boy, are you in for an awakening. Do you have, Bob? But you need to understand there are some things you're going to have the ability and the experience to cope with. And listen, and they're opposed to you. Do you see what I'm saying? Now do you see how he can say in verse 28, all things work together for good? Doesn't matter what it is. These are all gaining experience for you that you're going to put to work out there. You're going to get the whole spectrum. Now, if you look at it that way, you might say, well, wait a minute. I don't have hardly anything happen to me much. So if someone, let's say like John, stuff is happening all the time, you say, well, then he's really getting a lot of experience. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. But God's not piling it on John. Just, that's what's happening with John. With Francis, okay, Francis is rolling, okay. All right. Maybe happening with Francis too. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Loopy, you see what I'm saying? God's not prescribing any of this. But by the way, the policy of evil is, as far as the bad stuff, the policy of evil, it doesn't mean everything that happens in your life is going to be bad. You'll still have some good stuff happen. And let me tell you what, you'll be glad when it does. But that's training too. When it goes right, you learn something. When it goes wrong, you learn something else. Are you with me? That's the essence of verse 28. Now do you see why it's God? Because everybody looks at that verse like it's what God's doing for the here and now. That's not what you're being prepared for. How do you know that? Because it says, back me up a verse, Trent, according to his, oh no, that was it, according to his purpose. And everything that God has purposed in both programs revolves around sonship. God's not doing a single thing in eternity outside of sonship. The little flock are going to be treated as sons, and when they get into the kingdom, they're going to be adopted sons and daughters that will have doctrine that allow them to do the job they're going to do on this earth as the head of all nations. And we are going to be educated in a doctrine that allows us to be the intelligentsia for the creature in the heavenly places. And that's two different realms, but it's going to be sons and daughters in both. In fact, give me, I think that next verse is Galatians. Give me, skip 35. There you go, Galatians 4. And when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law, to redeem them that were under the law. Why? That we might receive the adoption of sons. You know what even the redemption has in view? Adoption. Even redemption, it's not the end. We get to thinking, oh, just get them saved, that's all we're after. God says, no, salvation is a means to a different end. You see? And that's really where this is going. Okay. Now I need to do that, verse 28. Okay, for good. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God. And that good means that it is for your benefit. When it says that good, it has to do with your sonship training. That's the good that's in line here. It's his sonship purpose that good is being worked out for. And that means that you gain something in this. And you do. Can you see? There's something very practical that's being gained that you're going to take with you when you go into the heavenly places. That good is nothing more than the success of your sonship life out in those heavenly places. That's what that is about. And now this last part of the verse, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. And here's what we have, two qualifiers. Now, I'm not, but I'm not going to have time to talk about both of these qualifiers in the detail that I want, so we'll reserve that for next time. But I need to tell you about this because this is important. To them that love God. Now, when you read that, you just automatically default and you just think about the whole world that loves God. That is not what that is talking about. Once again, that's a very shallow reading of this whole context of what's going on. To them who are the called, and there's something for you, according to his purpose. And because we've already identified about this purpose, and I know I just said a couple of things about it, but I don't really think it takes 45 minutes of me running scriptures for you to understand that God's whole purpose was to train a people to think like him, to live like him, so they could labor with him. And that was the whole reason for adopting them in the first place. You don't need to be a Rhodes Scholar to figure that out. That is his purpose here. If it wasn't, he could run the whole thing without you and me. He wouldn't need to go through all of that. That's the whole purpose of it. So we'll talk about the details of these, but here's the point that I'm trying to make about this. You know this is not talking about the whole world, but also it's not just talking about saved people. These qualifiers take this out of the realm of those that are just justified unto eternal life. I want to take you back to those two inheritances. Everybody gets the heir of God inheritance. It doesn't matter. If you're saved, you get it. But not everybody gets the joint heir inheritance. That's reserved with a qualifier. If we suffer with him. Well, this has two qualifiers here, and next week you'll understand why there's two qualifiers. No, I say next week, the next class. First of all, this to them who are the called according to his purpose. And I'm going to tell you what that is. I'm going to just shorten this up for the sake of this session, and we'll do the detail work. This is talking about people who have made the cry of Abba, Father, and are actively engaged in the sonship education. That's who that's about. By the way, that's the whole context you've been in this whole chapter. You haven't been talking about anybody else. And when he says this, and again, we'll dissect that next time, but I don't know how to do it except say it plainly. That verse is not true for anybody that's not a son being educated. That verse doesn't work for anybody else. Now, I know you think, well, that's very elitist. I'm not trying to act like that. I'm just telling you, these are the only ones that all things are working together for good. Do you know why? No one else is being trained to labor up there. Only a son involved in the education. He's the only one that can get that benefit because he's the only one that's actively involved in the training. I mean, I really have to explain, if you don't show up for practice, you really can't train to do it, can you? Do you see it? So this is pretty exclusive. This verse is written for, 40 people. No, there's more than that. But you understand what I'm saying. This verse is written to say, by the way, that's a comfort. And I'll tell you why. Because that group is also the only one suffering under the individualized attack of the policy of evil. See, what is the policy of evil trying to get you to do? Why is it attacking you? Not just because it doesn't like you. What's it trying to get you to do? Stop. To quit. And I've told you before, once you quit, all of the sufferings from the policy of evil go away immediately. You'll know. First, you'll know before that happens. And if you quit your sonship, they'll all stop. It got what it wanted, and it'll stop. And you'll get trained. If you do sonship, you get this. This is what I'm going to do to you. And so it's trying to train you. Just stay away from sonship. Well, if you're not involved in sonship, the policy of evil doesn't care about that. You've already, you not only didn't quit, you never started. You are no threat. Do you see? So not only can all things not work together for good for them, the policy of evil's not interested in them. I mean, this makes perfect sense when you think about it. So the qualifiers at the end of verse 28 are not referring to a saved person, only to sons and daughters who are involved in the sonship education. And so, let's see, I had one more thing to say about that. Verse 28, do we have it up there? Let me give you a homework assignment. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. That word together. Those things, all things, are working. Now, don't say it out loud here. If you think you know the answer, keep it to yourself until next time we meet, because I want you to work on this. We know that all things work together. It's not just the all things. They're working together with something else. How do you know that? Well, because if it was just all the things that are happening and that was the only thing that was working, everybody would get the benefit. Because good and bad things happen to everybody. These only work for good when they work together with something else. The homework assignment is, what is the something else? Just think about it. Don't say it out loud. Just think about it. Do you think you know? Okay. So just think about that. What is it working together with? Because what you're going to see, now if I tell you that, I'm telling you the answer. Okay, I'll just leave it there. I'll just leave it there. Just think about what those all things are working together with. This is just going to shed more light on what it is that we're talking about. All right, now, with that, when we come back the next time, here's what we're going to do. I'm just going to do enough detailed work on these qualifiers that you understand that what I've told you is absolutely true about that. And then you know what we have to do. Now that you, by the way, you now know what verse 28 is all about. You know, in fact, now you know how all things work together for good. They're actually preparing you. They're the training ground that prepares you for what you're going to do when you get in the creature. That's how it works. And so now you say, okay, I believe that. But reading verse 28 alone is not enough. You've got to have the proof of that, and that's given in 29 and 30. So as you read this week, read 29 and 30 and ask yourself, how is that the proof of verse 28? Because you remember, it's all those theological terms, you know, for whom he justified, whom he called, you know, he's predestined, he foreknew, and all that. Okay? All right. Any question about what we have covered, John? No. No, we'll do it next week. We'll do it next time. No, and it really is critical. And I've told you how you'll fail. If this doesn't happen, it'll be the counterfeit truth. That's what it'll be. That's a good point. All right, any other questions? Oh, sure. So like the one that we used. I'm a farmer. I'm praying for God to make it rain. Isn't that more attractive than saying I'm supposed to endure the drought? Sure it is. Sure. And see, in the world will look at you and say, well, that's crazy. How is enduring the drought of any value? Here's what God's thinking. How is your crops of any value when you get up in the creature? You're not made to grow crops here. You're made to labor with your Father in the heavenly places. We have placed the unimportant things as the most important and the most important things as the least important. And so God is looking at it and saying, suppose that you got rain just by praying for it. How is getting crops, how is that training you for a hardship that you're going to have to deal with when you get into the heavenly places? It doesn't at all. That's why he said, see, so the counterfeit would be, you're not, you know what, you need to ask God for rain. And if you don't get it, well, you need to have faith. And then you need to confess your sins. And, well, they'll do this whole line of stuff. Do you see? That's one? Okay.
Heavenly purpose and our upward call of the,
See, that's a good thought.
Anything on earthly things.
Well, sure. And that's a good thought because, see, that's what we do with verse 28. We related it back to our life on this earth. It's all going to be good. We're going to work it for good. And he's saying, no, there is going to be some bad things that will happen. But you'll be able to deal with it. The sonship curriculum will, equip you to do that. And not only will you be able to endure that, but you'll really see it for what it is. It won't be you gritting your teeth in the corner trying to keep a stiff upper lip and get through it, but it'll be you understanding it really is an honor and a privilege to suffer this. And by the way, you know what you're gaining is so great that you've already been told that suffering isn't worthy to be compared. Linda?
I think one of the hardest things is when you're in a prayer group, and people are praying for stuff.
I know. And people ask me all the time, people say, give me a way to say in 3 minutes what they need to hear, that I can tell them. I have no idea. Here, I do this, I go, call Rick. Right, right, right. Look, you want me to tell you what's hard? Have somebody come into this group now. Oh, you know, we're assuming a lot of things that we've already hashed out, and to them, it hasn't been hashed out. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you, folks. I appreciate you and love you. Thank you for spending your time to come, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. That's right. That's exactly right.